gets nearly twice what she raised for her failed presidential run. Jill Stein raising nearly $7 million to try to recount votes.
Yeah, but tell that to her donors as the Green Party nominee drops Pennsylvania, now claiming she doesn't have $1 million to pay for it.
Oh, that's amazing. Here to weigh in is Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace, who'll be sitting down with Jill Stein on the big show this morning. Chris, what do you make of this? I don't have the money to continue in Pennsylvania.
Well, she says she doesn't have $1 million bond that would have to be posted before they even began the recount, but she's not giving up there. She says she's going to take the fight out of state court where they made that decision about the bond, and she's going to take it to federal court. So the recount is underway in Wisconsin, and she's going to try to push it through federal court in Pennsylvania, and she's also trying to push it in Michigan.
Chris, what's the point of this?
Right.
We've seen 1/7 of the recount happen in Wisconsin, and the vote total has changed by 2 total votes. How does she maintain this?
Well, look, she says that this is more about just ensuring the accuracy of the vote, that every vote is counted properly, than it is to try to change the outcome of the election. On the other hand, it is kind of interesting that she chose 3 states that Donald Trump won narrowly and didn't choose any states. And there's one, New Hampshire, that Hillary Clinton won by just 3,000 votes, much a smaller margin than any of the Trump states. And she's not contesting or trying to get a recount there. So, these are all good questions, and I'll be asking Jill Stein at the top of the hour.
Yeah, well,
Here's
also, Chris, she's having a fundraiser tomorrow at Trump Tower. Jill Stein is a press conference, rather, encouraging people to continue to give money for this effort. Are people being duped into this? I mean, where is all this money ultimately going, as Pete was asking?
Well, it is going to the recount because it costs a lot of money, and because of the fact that there wasn't that tight a margin. I think it's in most of these places it has to be half of 1%. Because it's outside there, she has to pay for the recount. So it's not like the money isn't being spent, but it's certainly, you're raising a legitimate question. Is she doing this recount to try to change the election result, to make sure every vote is counted, or is she doing it, as you point out, she's raised a lot more money for the recount than she has for either of her presidential runs in 2012 or 2016. Right. Is she doing it to try to build up a war chest and to build up a Rolodex for 2020?
If I was a betting man. No one was talking about her, and she's now a big guest on Fox News Sunday. Also, Kellyanne Conway ahead of a huge week for the Trump transition team. What do you expect she'll be talking about today, Chris?
Well, I know what I'll be asking her about. Obviously, the number one topic, which you guys have been talking about today, is the furor over Trump's phone calls, not just with the president of Taiwan, which raises questions about is he going to change U.S. policy towards China, but also conversations that he's had with the prime minister of Pakistan, a country that we've had a very kind of hands-off relationship with, and he was saying, at least according to the Pakistanis, I'm going to do anything I can to help you. He also talked to the president of the Philippines, Duterte, who is a very controversial guy who's been accused of killing extrajudicially thousands of suspected drug dealers. So that's one of the questions, is he getting all of the briefing, all the information he needs, or is he just accepting congratulatory phone calls and in that sense possibly stepping on some diplomatic toes?
Interesting.
Very interesting stuff. Chris, we'll be watching this morning.
Jill Stein, Kellyanne Conway, Fox News Sunday. Thank you very much, Chris Wallace.
Thanks,
Chris.
guys. It was like 4 hours ago.
It was just like 4 hours ago.
And he's already up and already tweeting this morning.
And this morning, though, he's talking about policy, and he's blasting critics and talking more about these businesses that may want to move jobs overseas, and he's criticizing them.
That's right. He's staying on the theme. We had Leah Carter in here talking about the dials, and on the economy and on jobs, it's not just Republicans and independents, it's Democrats responding to it. So he went on a Twitter storm this morning with 6 tweets that will combine together about jobs. I'll start, and I think we'll probably hand off. The U.S. is going, this is Donald Trump this morning, the U.S. is going to substantially reduce taxes and regulations on businesses, but any business that leaves our country for another country, fires its employees, builds a new factory or plant in the other country, and then thinks it will sell its product back into the U.S.
It goes on saying without retribution or consequences is wrong. There will be a tax on our soon-to-be strong border of 35% for these companies wanting to sell their product, their cars, AC units, etc., back across the border. This tax will make leaving financially difficult
But these companies are able to move. We're still reading this, by the way, even though we don't have them on the screen. These companies are able to move between all 50 states with no tax or tariff being charged. Please be forewarned prior to making a very expensive mistake. The United States is open for business.
In all caps, the United States is open for business. And I think that's the theme. That's the point. There's a lot in those 6 tweets, but he's recognized the Americans are sick and tired of watching their jobs flee. He had success with Carrier. He's talking about other companies, and he's talking about the policies that will ultimately make sure that you don't have to go company by company because the incentives change. The tax structure is such that businesses want to be in the United States, and they're not. You don't have to force them or punish them if they want to leave.
There's a lot to unpack, though, in this because he's not president yet. So the policy is such that you know he's kind of picking this one company and making this deal, but he's not the president of the United States yet. So Carrier gets 1,100 jobs saved. But what about the 50 other companies that are planning to do the same thing? Can you go in and individualize these things before you can become president of the United States? And what happens if they move their jobs there before he becomes president and then try to sell their goods back to the United States after he becomes president? There's a lot of unanswered questions.
And there's going to be an ongoing debate about how President-elect Trump was able to beat Hillary Clinton when many people thought that it was going to go her way. And I will say you have to give him credit for the message that he had on the campaign, because it was a simple one. It was make America great again. It is I'm going to bring jobs back to the U.S. I'm going to keep jobs here. We want things made in America again. That message has stayed consistent now as he has been elected our next president, and that is something that he has worked full-time on since he got elected into office.
Well, that's right. And if you want to change something, if you're a change agent in any organization or bureaucracy, sometimes you have to make an example of something up front. And that's exactly what he did with Carrier. He said, this is a place where we're going to keep these jobs here. He negotiated a deal. There's another company, Rexnord, down the road that he's talking about as well. Doesn't mean you can do that with every company, but you show that you mean business. You show that you're here. There's a new sheriff in town. Then you change the policy.
So, though, Pete, here's the thing, though. Now that, you know, all these companies saw what he did with Carrier, there's a lot of workers around the country who are coming out protesting, saying, hey, focus on our company, because our company's now about to send some jobs overseas. We spoke to Kyle Beeman. He's a 10-year employee at Rexnord, which is literally down the street from Carrier in Indianapolis. And he was excited when he heard that Trump was going to get involved now with his company. Listen.
I'm very happy. I mean, honestly, when I seen the tweet Friday night, I was really shocked because I know that, you know, he worked on Carrier. And Carrier had, you know, the 1,400 employees. We only had 300. I figured we were small potatoes, that we probably we'd get lost in the storm. But when I seen the tweet that he was engaged, I'm very happy.
Real short answer, Kyle. Do you believe Donald Trump can change this?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Wow. You know what's interesting? So Fox and Friends earlier this week had on an employee from Carrier who he said he wasn't originally a Trump fan, and he said he saved my job.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And he said, I can't wait to hopefully see him. And he went to Indiana just a couple days ago and said, I hope I get to shake his hand and say thank you, Mr. President-elect Trump, for saving my job, because now I'll have Christmas with my family.
That's a great point. And that Rexford employee, I don't know if he was a Trump supporter or not, or a Republican or a Democrat or not, but he's going to look forward and say, I now have a job if that job is saved. That's how you change political dynamics. And if the working class believes they've got that business, America is now open for business, Donald Trump's going to be in for a lot of success.
Interesting, though. He's up early tweeting. Do you think that he gets up and thinks, I have a message I want to send out, and just pulls out his phone and starts? I mean, how do you think this all goes down behind the scenes?
We're going to ask Reince Priebus, who's going to be here on the show a little bit later, because we want to find out, you know, what sort of leverage or what sort of freedom Reince gives him now.
Does he get approval now?
Does he get approval?
Do you think Reince gives him freedom?
I don't know, or I'm sure it's the other way around. But you know, there was an effort to try to rein him in during the campaign. Is that reining in still happening?
I'm curious.
We'll ask Reince. But we're going to be talking with Reince Priebus on the show because obviously we're ahead of 1 week. We're looking forward this week to a lot of big cabinet announcements this week as General Petraeus this morning is getting his nationwide, basically, audition. He's going to be on ABC, and I think the Trump camp is looking very closely at how he handles his interview today, answering questions about classified information. As Governor Huckabee on our show earlier says, look, he has to be thoughtful about who he picks here, and he thinks that General Petraeus needs to clear the air over giving this classified information. That's a big issue, especially when he hit Hillary Clinton on so hard. Listen.
I think the one thing that this tells us is that for all of the talk that the press has had about Donald Trump, he is not an impulsive man. Look at what he has done. He has taken a very thoughtful, thorough, deliberate process in selecting cabinet members, not just Secretary of State. And I think this is a real pushback against his critics who have tried to portray him as a man who just wakes up one morning and reaches out and grabs the phone and says, this is what I'm going to do. Clearly, he is a very thoughtful person. He's thinking this through carefully. He's got excellent people in front of him to choose from, and he's going to make a decision. But the one thing you also know about Donald Trump, it's going to be his decision. He'll make it.
Yeah, the other, he made a lot of great points.
I thought that was spot on because
Yes.
as we've seen in his selection for who will be the next Secretary of State, he is taking his time on this. And he has met with a number of different people with different backgrounds. And I think he wants to make sure they can get through confirmation, that they're going to be loyal to me, and that they're the best person for this job, because it is a difficult job moving forward.
Indeed.
It's going to be.
And it's an audition played out in real time, and that's going to have to portray us. There's also another name, though, that we saw him yesterday.
We saw him yesterday. Your dad on the show, former governor of Utah, former presidential candidate Jon Huntsman, former ambassador to China, and he was incredibly articulate on the point, of course. No one perhaps knows more about that region than him. We're talking about China and Taiwan. Now we're hearing that his name may be considered for Secretary of State. Behind the scenes, Abby, come on.
You know, as we're talking about the South China Sea as well, that's going to be huge moving forward. Like I just said, and I'm biased, of course, I'm his daughter, but he's incredibly qualified, speaks Mandarin, very smart man, understands the world, and I think has proven he's been through confirmation before as ambassador a couple of times. You know what? One thing he's taught my family is you always step up and you serve when you're asked. I've got two brothers in the Navy, and he said, I don't care who would, politics aside, you step up and you serve them loyally, and you do the job well. And he's done that since I've known, since I've been around, since I've been born.
Who's, of course, the big side of this, said she feels like she would have one more big race in her.
You know what? My dad said he's got one more. He's got the energy right now to get back out there, whether it's a run for Senate, as you talked about yesterday, or getting out to serve again. I think he's ready for this next step.
He's certainly qualified. I mean, when you look at the list of candidates for Secretary of State, all eminently qualified people. It's a matter of style and who Donald Trump trusts. And
who he sits down with and who he connects with. At the end of the day, that is how he makes a lot of his decisions. Do I trust this person? Do I like this person? So we'll see how all of this plays out. But like I said, that's all I know. So we will leave it there. And I'm very biased.
If you find out, though, will you text me?
Yeah, please let us know
and
during the commercial break. All right, coming up here on the show, she duped her donors out of $7 million. Now, Green Party candidate Jill Stein says she can't afford the $1 million fee for the recount in Pennsylvania. So where did all of that money go that people donated? Chris Wallace is here to react on that recount next.
Plus, we all know the tale of the launch this month.
Way. There you go, Pete.
It was a great decision out the gate.
Yeah.
We freed 5 Islamist terrorists to bring him home. Now Bo Bergdahl, disgraced Bo Bergdahl, is asking for one more favor, a presidential pardon. Facing life in prison for deserting his post in Afghanistan, the Army sergeant requested a full pardon as part of a letter thanking President Obama for rescuing him in that Taliban prisoner swamp back in 2014. Here with his reaction, retired Lieutenant Colonel Michael Walls. He commanded the Army Special Forces Group in Afghanistan the day Bergdahl disappeared, so he actually did go searching for Bo Bergdahl. He's also the author of a book called Warrior Diplomat, a Green Berets battles from Washington to Afghanistan. Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, tell us, what was it like at that moment? Bo Bergdahl walks off his post. What are you and other men in that theater doing?
Well, Pete, I could tell you, I took command the day he walked off his post in eastern Afghanistan. We had a campaign plan in place set to target the Taliban and the Haqqani network months before the Afghan national elections, and everything was thrown up in the air. We were told to stop what you're doing, shift and search for Bergdahl, and that was everyone in theater. Assets like close air support, drones, medevac helicopters, reinforcements were all shifted to search for him. He disrupted the entire campaign across Afghanistan.
For one deserter, the mission completely changes. So here he is now going through the Army's court-martial process, yet his attorney's trying to get him a sweetheart deal. This is what Bo Bergdahl's attorney said. He said, I have grave concerns as to whether Sergeant Bergdahl can receive a fair trial given the beating he has taken over many, many months from Mr. Trump, who will be the commander-in-chief. They're claiming he can't get a fair hearing through the Army system. Do you think he can, and will he?
I think he absolutely will. Look, General Flynn, who's the pick for National Security Advisor, President-elect Trump's pick, was actually the intelligence officer on the ground in Afghanistan over all theater assets. He knows what happened, and he knows the disruption that this one soldier, this one deserter caused. However, he also is a veteran of 30 years in the Army. He understands the military judicial system, as do General Mattis, as does General Petraeus if he's picked. He's going to let the Army play this out.
Colonel, I mean, but he's hoping that Obama will pardon him. What do you think the chances are that he would do that kind of thing?
Well, I hope nil. I think this
how would it strike you?
Well, I would be incensed, as would, a whole army, literally, of soldiers and veterans behind me. Look, there's two pieces here that we need to make a distinction. There's the actual prosecution, and if he's prosecuted, he'll be reduced in rank, likely to private. He will not get any veterans benefits. He will not be afforded the honor of being called a POW. And importantly, he will not receive any back pay, which is currently accruing since he deserted. So all of those, and he'll get a dishonorable discharge. I want to see all of those things happen. Now, there's this notion of, well, did he kind of have time served? Look, if the judge and the jury says, you suffered enough, that's fine, but that's a separate issue than all of those honors that he should have pulled from him.
I know you and I and many others feel like a lot more than a dishonorable discharge is deserved for what that man did to other men and to that mission. Lieutenant Colonel Waltz, thank you very much for joining us. The book is called Warrior Diplomat. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Pete.
You got it.
Welcome back. Well, President-elect Donald Trump kicking off his thank you tour, visiting the key battleground states that helped secure his win against Hillary Clinton. So how do Americans think it's going? Lee Carter is the president and partner with Musklansky & Partners, and she has the brand new dials just in. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning.
All right, let's start with this one. Trump on the carrier business, keeping jobs here in the U.S. Here's what he said.
We're saving the jobs at the carrier plant from going to Mexico, 1,100 jobs. And I'm asking all companies to keep their jobs in America, and we will work to make America a better environment for workers and businesses. And we will crack down on all foreign trade abuses that undermine your ability and your company's ability to compete. Those days are over when those companies are going to leave.
You can't even see the GOP line through most of that.
It was so high, off the charts. Really an A for Republicans, independents a B+. Democrats even gave this a C. I think for everybody criticizing this deal, it is a message to Americans that he is focused on bringing jobs back and he's going to act on it. And it's something that really is resonating across the board.
There was also a moment where the crowd was shouting, "Lock her up." Let's play that.
Although we did have a lot of fun fighting Hillary, didn't we? Right?
You always want to be the gracious winner, right?
You do.
It didn't seem like people were loving this.
They weren't. There weren't. Even Republicans that I spoke with gave this a C. The Democrats obviously gave this an F, and I don't blame them. The point is he's giving a thank you tour. Let's focus on the future, not what he had to do to get there. Everybody's saying, move on. Don't talk about Hillary Clinton anymore.
Yeah, it's a good message. All right, well, his big message during the whole campaign was Make America Great Again. It's something he also touched on in his thank you tour, asking people to believe in America again. Here he is.
I'm asking you to believe in America once again. We have many challenges, but this is truly an exciting time to be alive. There's been no time like it. The script is not yet written. We do not know what the next page will read, but I'll tell you, it's going to be a great page. But for the first time in a long time, what we do know is that the pages will be authored by each one of you. Each one of you.
Yeah, this is all about the American people. The independents giving it an A as well.
They are. You could see off the charts there with Republicans and independents. Democrats not quite ready to come around to Donald Trump's message here. But the bottom line is he made this about the American people. He said the best is yet to be written, and it's all about you And it was a fantastic message. People feel inspired and optimistic, and hopefully he'll be able to bring Democrats along, too. He's promised unity. Let's see what happens
that's
now.
A great point. A great way to end this. Leo, it's good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Have a good day. All right.
All right. Well, Jill Stein on Fox News Sunday this morning, and is about to be answering some questions from our own Chris Wallace about these recounts that have been unfolding in Michigan, Wisconsin, and possibly Pennsylvania. And now word overnight that the Green Party, they're not going to be forking over the $1 million bond in order to pay for the recount to go forward in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and it's raising a lot of eyebrows because she's raised over $7 million so far for this recount, more than double what she ever raised during her presidential. You spoke about the fact that she's going to be on Fox News Sunday, which she will be, which means she was getting makeup on when I walked out in the hallway, and I happened to talk to her briefly, and I asked her that. I said, why aren't you spending $1 million in Pennsylvania when you have the resources? She doesn't feel like the state courts are going to be fair, and so they're withholding that money. But a lot of people, I mean, and I take that explanation, but a lot of people are wondering, if you're raising the money for the recount, but you're not willing to invest it to attempt to formally do it, then what are you really doing?
What is the money for? Well, here's what the Green Party has said about this. They say petitioners are regular citizens of ordinary means. They can't afford to post the $1 million bond required by that court.
So the question this morning is why? What's the end game here? What are you going after? What is the attempt here? She was on Kennedy's show earlier this week, and she was having a little trouble, I think, explaining her reasoning behind all this. Listen.
There is no evidence until you look for it. That's the thing about hacking into our voting system. The Democratic Party database hacked into, right? We saw private emails hacked into, and we saw the voter database hacked into in Arizona, Illinois. That's proven. This is not conjecture.
Wouldn't you agree that in order to hack into something, you have to be connected to the internet?
So I'm not talking about the election system. I'm talking about a voter database.
I love Kennedy's question. The first rule of hacking is you need the internet.
You know what, though? The election is over, and we're still talking about Jill Stein. She's, you know, a big guest on the show here on Fox News Sunday as well.
Right.
And so maybe some of this is her wanting to keep her name out there, maybe running again in 2020.
Well, exactly. And I asked her, is this going to change the outcome?
No one ever does that, right? It's never for themselves.
You mean tee it up for something else? Something later? Raise money? No, people don't do that. We'll see. She acknowledges, though, it's not going to change the outcome of the election. Purportedly, it's about voter integrity. But I asked, why not other states? When I talked to Jill Stein briefly, why not other states? And she said, maybe there will be more states. So maybe we'll just get more and more and more. Recount them all.
Yeah, well, she's going to Trump Tower tomorrow to do sort of a press conference on this and ask people for more money. So this story may continue on.
So watch Fox News Sunday for more on that.
/fundraiser.
Plus this.
Coming up, some of Hillary Clinton supporters turned homicidal, sending death threats to members of the Electoral College. One member who has received hundreds of angry messages joins us just ahead.
Plus, they were united on the campaign trail, but this morning, Sarah Palin and President-elect Trump are at odds. What are they at odds over? His business plans. She calls it corporate welfare, crony capitalism, what he's doing at the Carrier plant.
And everyone wants to know who Mr. Trump will pick for Secretary of State. Could we find out this week? Well, incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, guess what? He's joining us next. So we're going to ask him all about it. After the election, Hillary Clinton had this message for her supporters. Take a listen.
Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
But many of her followers are still refusing to accept the results, even going so far as to send death threats to members of the Electoral College, demanding that they switch their vote or die.
Jeez. Well, Michael Benarian is one of those people. He joins us live now. Michael, you've been threatened as a member of the Electoral College. What have people been saying to you, and how did it start?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, by the way. So, unfortunately, this political cycle was very divisive, and in the weeks following the election, I was just inundated with hundreds and hundreds of emails, text messages, Facebook messages, letters to my house, about 4 or 5 a day. I have a large stack on my dining room table now. And unfortunately, some of those messages came with death threats, death wishes, and a lot of those angry messages from people who just couldn't accept the results of the elections.
Here are some of those. We'll read some of these threatening texts, some of what we're able to read on national television. I'll read this. You support bigotry, hate, and racism. I hope you die.
Oh,
here's another one. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Wow. Here's another one. And well, we don't even want to show you more of them. But what are they hoping to accomplish, Michael?
Well, I think it's just people venting their anger. I don't even think they realize what they're doing. A lot of people think because they're sending threats over the internet that they're not legitimate, but they are. I think that no one would actually believe that sending a threat like this would get me to change my vote. And if they do, they're got something else wrong with them. But I can't really say what's going on in someone's mind who would send a threat to somebody because they disagree on politics.
Michael, I want to ask what your message would be to people that are up in arms right now saying this isn't a democracy when you have an electoral college picking the president, when the popular vote has a different result here. That shouldn't be how we vote for someone. What is your message to them on that?
Well, my message is that we are a republic. And in this republic, we have systems put into place to ensure that every American has a voice in this process. And that's what the Electoral College ensures. If you have a national popular vote, you leave so many Americans' voices left unheard in these elections. The Electoral College gives a voice to people in middle America so that the big states like California and New York don't just dominate our election results every election. And people in Wyoming now and New Hampshire have a voice just as the people in California and Michigan and Florida, New York. So that system's put in place to ensure that Americans have a voice in this process.
You should get death threats for that voice.
Indeed. Michael Beneri, we appreciate you coming on, Michael, and these threats obviously should stop. And you know what? More people should take a civics course so that they know our country is a republic and not just a pure democracy. Thank you very much for your courage.
Thanks
for having me.
Well, remember last week when Christiane Amanpour from CNN was sort of doing her post-mortem of what the press had to deal with during the Trump campaign.
Saying that if he were our next president, people could end up
in
behind
cages,
bars
thrown up, that she was really worried about the press because of a Trump presidency. Well, she took some heat for that.
She did.
After that speech.
But now she's doubling down on that as well. So she was on NPR saying this about the treatment of the press. Take a listen.
I said never in a million years could I have imagined myself on this stage in New York really appealing for the safety and the freedom of the American press. And I based that on obviously Donald Trump's rhetoric against the press, calling us dishonest, despicable, and all sorts of other epithets that were hurled around. And I have covered enough of my colleagues who have ended up, as I put it, in cages in kangaroo courts in places like Cairo or in Moscow on trial for being inciters or sympathizers or associates or out-and-out, flat-out terrorists. So I feel I have to stand up for my own tribe in the United States.
So now
the tribe of the press.
Can we now play the soundbite of her outraged at the Obama administration looking into James Rosen, Fox News' James Rosen? Can you roll that tape? Oh, we don't have that tape. There is no tape of that. We don't
and by the way, this isn't Moscow and this isn't Cairo. This is whining elitists from the coast saying we have no idea what the people of America actually think and believe and why they could have ever voted for Donald Trump. So we're going to condemn them, elevate ourselves even more, and whine about it. And we got to listen to it.
You know, the biggest message that came out of this entire race was the media got it wrong. They got it wrong. I mean,
total egg in their face.
President-elect Trump ultimately ended up winning, and I can't help but think as I'm watching her, give her statement on having to stand up for the press and what they stand for. When we go out around the country and we go to these diners and we talk to the voters about the issues they care about, I would love to see her in one of these diners actually having a one-on-one conversation about why they voted for Mr. Trump, because it's hard to see that actually happening. And that's what matters. Those are the people that are watching television, the people that actually went out and voted. And there seems to be a real disconnect between what the media is saying and how they're handling it and how people are feeling around the country.
That's why the ratings reflect that. I mean, there's a reason for that. And look at CNN. This is the story yesterday we just talked about with CNN, where you had a producer behind the scenes. We played this story for you, joking around about the Trump airplane possibly going down and crashing.
Yeah.
And, anchor laughing about it on the air.
That's such a great point. Not only did they get it wrong, but clips like that and others, they've been exposed. It's not just wrong, they've been exposed for their left-wing agenda, that they're in the tank for Hillary Clinton. They're sending debate questions. They go to each other's weddings. It's the sort of the incestual relationship of the elite media on the left and the Democrats, and they were working and pushing Hillary Clinton. And then she lost.
Yeah, but here's what's crazy
and they
about
don't know what to do about it.
What does the media want? They want access, right? They want to be able to have conversations with our politicians. Who was the worst at giving access of almost any politician we've seen is Hillary Clinton. So I never quite understood that, because you want to be able to.
Because she didn't need access. They were doing work for her anyway.
Well, we got to save some time. You know why? Because we've got the incoming Chief of Staff, White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, going to be joining us in just moments. But first, they were united on the campaign trail this morning. Sarah Palin and President-elect Trump are at odds over his business plan. She called it crony capitalism.
Plus, it's the cabinet position on everyone's mind this morning. Who will President-elect pick a Trump pick for Secretary of State. And could we find out this week? Incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus joins us live next.
All right, it's the moment you've been waiting for all morning long. We've been waiting all morning long, and let's not waste any more time to talk to the incoming White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. Nice to see you this morning, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
You've got a very busy week ahead of you because we've been hearing about big cabinet announcements all week. And much talk this morning of General David Petraeus. People are calling it an audition of sorts, his appearance on ABC this morning. And how will he answer those tough questions about the classified information that was handed by him to some other individuals? And how will he answer those questions? And how do you think he will do this morning?
Well, I'm sure he'd do really well. I mean, he's obviously incredibly talented and very smart and very impressive person. I don't know who knows more about all the details that need to be understood that's happening in the Middle East than David Petraeus. And so, look, we're looking forward to seeing him, but quite frankly, this is an open process. He's one of many people that we are looking at for key positions. And the nice thing is, and I think what people should take away from this, is that we've got a president-elect in Donald Trump who is talking to everybody, and he's talking to the best and the brightest that this country has to offer, and that should encourage you, no matter who you are, whichever your political background is, you should be encouraged by a president that is talking to the best and brightest in America.
Well, and as you've seen, everyone has got their own opinions about all of these potential picks. Even
Right.
Edward Snowden, I don't know if you saw this yet, but he was on Yahoo News, and he had his own thoughts about General Petraeus. Here's what he said.
Despite the type of classified information he exposed.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not here to defend General Petraeus, so I mean, I'm not, you know, he's not working for us, and I'm not here to defend him or what he did. I'm simply here to tell you that we've got a president that's talking to everybody. We're having some great announcements coming up. You see that General Mattis is likely to be the Secretary of Defense, one of the greatest heroes of our lifetime, the most decorated Marine in a generation. These are the types of people and the picks that we've been putting in place, I think, are giving the American people a lot of confidence.
But of course, he is on the short list for Secretary of State. We saw him meeting with the President-elect the other day. So he is meeting there. And then how would then Mr. Trump square that circle when he went after Hillary Clinton so hard on the idea of classified information living on her email server? How would he do that?
Well, I don't know if he is going to square. I don't know if he is going to square the circle. I think that's how you put it. I'm not suggesting that he is. I'm just suggesting that he had a conversation with him, and there's really not much more to report than that. They had a good chat. They had a good talk.
What can we expect this week, though? I mean, we've heard from President-elect Trump in his rally a few days ago saying that it's going to be a big week this next week. A number of big announcements will be made. What can you tell us about anything we can expect?
Well, here's what I can tell you. We're moving very fast. The president's talking to a lot of people. We could make news for an entire week without doing anything more for that week. So we've got enough lined up that we could make news every day.
Sure.
But he's going to start out, I think, with an announcement early in the week, and perhaps a couple, one including General Mattis. We're going to continue our thank you tour this upcoming week, and we're going to continue to roll out names. And I think as each name gets rolled out, people are going to have the confidence that we have a president for all Americans, no matter your background, no matter your political affiliation, race, gender, all of the above. Someone that's going to make you proud, someone that's going to make America great again, and that's what he wants to do. He's just a bridge builder that wants to make this stuff happen fast.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have one of the biggest jobs in the country with a boss who's tireless. He's up late and he's up early, and we know he's up early because this morning we saw him tweeting very early about a topic and about jobs, an issue he's made a priority with what happened at the Carrier plant and other places he's talked about. So he got up this morning and sent out about 6 tweets. We're going to read 3 of them and get you to comment a little bit. Mr. Trump wrote, "The U.S. is going to substantially reduce taxes and regulations on businesses, but any business that leaves our country for another country, fires its employees, builds a new factory or plant in the other country, and then thinks it will sell its products back into the U.S. without retribution or consequence is wrong. There will be a tax on on them on our soon to be strong border for these companies." So when Now, in the morning like this, when you wake up, do you know those tweets are coming, or are they coming because, hey, I want to focus on bringing business back to this country?
Because so you get no sleep.
Listen, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but that's what makes President Trump so unique and different, that he wants to engage with the American people individually. But here's where we want to go, and this is where our party wants to be, and it's where President-elect Trump wants to be. We want to be the party, and he wants to be the president for the American worker. We want to take away incentives from companies to make it better for them to go overseas. In other words, you know, this repatriation of this trillions of dollars sitting overseas, we want to bring that back into the country. We want to even out our import-export situation where exports are being taxed but our imports aren't. We want to lower the corporate and business tax rates so that companies can't flee to not pay taxes but put them in a better position back home. This all puts more money in people's pockets. It keeps jobs here, and people can live the American dream. And so we want to be the party for the American worker. That's where we're going to be with President Trump, and that's the message that he's sending across America.
You recall Republicans are critical of the Obama administration for picking what they called winners and losers, just putting their money behind, the wood behind the bat of companies like Solyndra, in the solar industry. And
yes.
Sarah Palin has come out in an opinion piece this week and is at odds with President-elect Trump over his move into the Carrier plant and sort of helping to save the 1,100 jobs there. She wrote this in her opinion piece. She said, when government steps in arbitrarily with individual subsidies favoring one business over others, it sets inconsistent, unfair, illogical precedent. Has the president-elect spoken to Governor Palin about this? What's his response to this?
Well, no, he hasn't. But the response is this. It was about $850 per job out of the state of Indiana. This was a company that was just 2 weeks ago ready to leave and pack up for good. President-elect Trump stepped in, worked with Governor Pence, excuse me, and put a package together to make sure that this company stayed. But the truth is, by that logic, you know, just taxing these companies at 35% is an artificial punishment coming the other direction from government. I mean, all these incentives, all of these tax reform measures that need to take place are either incentives or punishment, one way or the other, pushing or pulling companies from doing business in the United States. And so what President Trump wants to do is he wants to take away as many of those punishments from these companies that exist today so that things like this Carrier situation and the government being involved in saving those jobs actually don't have to happen, because companies are going to be deciding to stay here on their own because the business environment here is so great that they wouldn't want to move to another country. That's the place we want to get to. But until we get to that place, President-elect Trump is going to be on the phone talking to these companies and trying to encourage them to not leave our country.
Well, that's the next question. Earlier in the program, we had an employee from a company, Rexnord, which is about a mile down the road from Carrier. The president-elect has tweeted about this company as well. You just alluded to it, but do you think, will he be on the phone with, you know, he was obviously on the phone with Carrier and those executives. Will he be on the phone with Rexnord? Will he be on the phone with other companies during this time period before he's able to put the policies in place to change the underlying environment?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, this is a president that he's not the kind of person that, you know, you don't sell him, look, you know, President Trump, tomorrow at 4:48, you're going to call this. He doesn't have the patience to be boxed in to just do one thing at a time. He wants to get it done. He wants to get it done fast. So I would not be surprised if he wasn't on the phone with all of these companies, as many as he can, to encourage them to stay, to stick it out, wait until these policies can be put in place, and do a business here in America. That's where we want these companies to be. And I think they want to be here in America, but we have to give them the incentives to stay here.
All right. Well, you never know quite what he's going to tweet. You don't know where he's going to show up. You also don't know if he's going to be in costume or not. That was a big story coming out this morning. Attending a Halloween costume last night with Kellyanne Conway. Did he dress up? It was a heroes and villains themed party. The big question is, it looks like he went as himself.
Did you dress up?
No, you know what? He's a great sport. He has a lot of fun. And it was a good time to relax a little bit, so we're happy for him.
Before we go, we have like 10 seconds left. Any announcements about the cabinet you want to make here? Give us a name before we let you go.
10 seconds.
You know me. I like to do things in order, so I'm not going to be making any news.
We're seeing if we can get you to go out of order this morning.
All right. Well, good to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Well, over a dozen people have been shot in Chicago since Friday, but the city's mayor is now more focused on protecting illegal immigrants. Now he's setting aside a taxpayer slush fund to do that.
Oh, good. And you just heard from Reince Priebus on this. The president-elect warning American companies, move your business out of America and face consequences. So how will Trump...
Quick headlines for you. Chicago now using taxpayer money to protect its illegal immigrants from deportation. Mayor Rahm Emanuel now creating a $1 million legal protection fund to shield, quote, anxious immigrants worried about a Trump presidency. And this after Emanuel openly defied Mr. Trump's pledges to defund sanctuary cities and deport millions of criminals. And the man claiming self-defense in the shooting death of a former NFL player has a history, apparently, of road rage incidents. In 2006, Ronald Gasser got into an argument with another driver at the exact same intersection in Louisiana where he shot and killed Joe McKnight on Thursday. He was accused of assaulting that driver, and those charges later dismissed. Now other Louisiana drivers coming forward with more stories of Gasser cursing at them while driving. Gasser was released by police on Thursday with no charges filed. And we now know what triggered rapper Kanye West's massive mental breakdown. TMZ reporting this, that West stopped taking his medicine as prescribed after wife Kim Kardashian was robbed at gunpoint in Paris, leading to a complete downward spiral. Well, he went on to cancel his tour and spend 8 days in a psych ward. He's now back home under doctors' supervision. And then there's this. New York City has solved the homeless crisis, apparently. Forget shelters. The city is going to pay friends and families of homeless people nearly $2,000 a month to take them in. And they'll even get a taxpayer-funded $500 gift card as a bonus for their hospitality. Well, the homeless family also gets a $500 gift card along with that.
What, free Netflix subscription, too? All right. Early this morning, Donald Trump making it clear he's not messing around when it comes to businesses leaving for Mexico.
That's right. And the president-elect warning them of heavy tax penalties, tweeting, America is, quote, open for business.
Here to react, Sunday Morning Futures host Maria Bartiromo. Good to see you, Maria.
Hey, guys. Good to see you.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, my reaction is this is a slippery slope. I think he's trying to say really just what you just said, Pete, and that is, look, we're open for business, and I mean business. Yeah. And so the tone right now is a little, look, watch what happens. I don't think in practicality that he is going to be calling up company after company and warning them, you better not leave the country or else. But I think he is trying to make sure it resonates that he is creating an environment, and the administration will create an environment for business that will be so attractive that you will not want to leave, and you will not want to even try to have a factory in Mexico and then try to get those products back in here.
You can't threaten, Maria, right? You've got to figure out a way to incentivize CEOs to want to keep these jobs here. And when you threaten them, sometimes that can backfire.
100%. I think what you said during the commercial break is absolutely right, and that is he's got to get the tone right. That is important.
Well, and Sarah Palin writing an opinion piece this week criticizing Mr. Trump, whom she supported during the campaign. She's saying this is exactly really what Republicans had criticized Democrats of doing with President Obama picking the likes of Solyndra and other businesses, picking winners and losers. She called it crony capitalism.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what he's doing. I mean, I interviewed Wilbur Ross and Steve Mnuchin last week on the morning show on the Fox Business Network, and Wilbur Ross was very clear. He said this idea of tariffs, it's used as a tool. It's going to be a tool to make sure companies understand that, yes, if you do move all of these jobs out of country and then try to produce the same things that you could have produced here in America and then try to get them over the border, you will face a tariff. But it's a tool to make sure companies understand, do it the other way.
Sure.
You know, it's going to be an attractive place for business. I agree this is a slippery slope. He has to get the tone right. I think he will.
He's using the tools he has at his disposal right now, though. I mean, he's the president-elect who hasn't had the ability to propose legislation and navigate in Congress and change the tax code.
Right.
So you would imagine, you would suspect the approach probably does shift once he has those tools at his disposal.
And, you know, he's not going to be calling up every company, and he's not going to be able to, as president of the free world, be able to know exactly where every plant is at every company. So I don't think it's going to be as granular as it is right now, as it seems right now.
Something I agreed with him about many years ago, and before he ever ran for president, he said, look, Americans like cheap stuff.
Yeah.
He said, I wish we in this country could buy one well-made American-made item, a well-made American TV, a well-made American tractor, instead of 5 ones that fall apart from China.
Yeah. Well, this is the risk, because if, in fact, we were to see tariffs, that means all of these products go up in price. And that's going to be the real risk that he's going to face, because if he's going to charge China 35% in tariffs and anybody else tariffs, companies trying to bring their products in, those companies will have no choice but to raise the prices.
Who's on the show today?
Well, we got a big show. We've got Newt Gingrich as the lead. We've got Kathy McMorris Rogers, one of the leading women, obviously, in Congress. She's going to talk about what is possible in terms of getting legislation through.
Great.
We're talking with Jeb Henserling. Of course, he's going to talk about Dodd-Frank. Stephen Mnuchin told me last week that that's the priority. Tax cuts, rule regulation back to 25.
Dodd-Frank, what will happen to that?
Yeah.
Maria, great to see you.
Thank you so much.
The show starts in 12 minutes.
I'll see you then.
Leave the United States anymore without consequences. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
That's President-elect Donald Trump sticking to his word and continuing to fight to keep jobs in the U.S. This time, now, he's turning his attention to a different company, tweeting, Rexnord of Indiana is moving, and this is a company about a mile away from Carrier. They're moving to Mexico and rather viciously firing all of its 300 workers. This is happening all over our country. No more. Well, this fight has personal meaning for Kyle Beeman. He's worked at Rexnord for 10 years, and his job is on the line. Good morning, Kyle. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Pete, and thank you for having me.
Tell me what this means to you that Donald Trump is fighting to try to keep your job, your specific job, in the United States.
I'm very happy. I mean, honestly, when I seen the tweet Friday night, I was really shocked because I know that, you know, he worked on Carrier, and Carrier had, you know, the 1,400 employees. We only had 300. I figured we were small potatoes, that we probably we'd get lost in the storm. But when I seen the tweet that he was engaged, I'm very happy.
Kyle, but right now, as it currently stands, Rexnord is slated to leave and go to Mexico. In preparing for this segment, I read that you have to train your Mexican counterparts for your job. Is that true?
That is something that we have learned in the last few days at work on the severance packages that Rexnord is offered in exchange for our jobs. But there's a provision in there, apparently, that for us to get our severance package or retirement package or any kind of money, that yes, the requirement will be that we'll have to train our counterparts to do the exact job that we're doing right now.
How does that make you feel?
Sick in my stomach.
And the wages that you earn, which I read are between $20 to $30 an hour, would be $5 an hour in Mexico. Why do you think why is this happening in our country? Why is our country bleeding these kinds of jobs and leaving for Mexico?
It honestly boils down to corporate greed. It's the almighty dollar. They can go across the border or over to China and get their products made for pennies on the dollar. The wages down there in Monterrey, Mexico, would be $3 an hour to $5 an hour. The upper range would be with benefits, whatever benefits that package that might be. I can't even imagine what that might be.
If your job left, what would you do?
Myself at my age, probably would have to reinvent myself again. But I'm more worried about my fellow workers, brothers and sisters in the union there at Rexnord. We've got young workers in there that have just recently got married, or they recently had a baby, or they just recently bought a home or a car, and those are the ones I'm really worried for.
Real short answer, Kyle. Do you believe Donald Trump can change this?
Yes. Yes, I do.
There we go. Well, we all hope he can, and we hope your job stays like those jobs from Carrier. Kyle, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You got it.